Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Hello, and welcome to our ARC episode today about the importance of research and why we think data is important. And not just me, I am recently come to terms with how much of a nerd I am, and I find data fascinating and information even more useful. And also, I'm not the only person that thinks data is important and research is important. So guys, why is research important? One sentence, go.
One sentence.
That's it.
We already discussed that I'm not good with big words, so I'm going to let Donny go first.
Well, for me, it's about making informed decisions. And I think that's a big part of what we do in accounting, is we help people make informed decisions. So it's not just that gut feel. Is there data, is there research, reliable research, that can help me make this better decision?
Yeah. And so I think there's a huge movement in our world to expose confirmation bias. And so one of the things that comes with data and research is people looking for data and research to support whatever decision they want to make or whatever position they want to take on a certain topic. And so, there is a lot of controversy concerning how to properly synthesize data, how to understand even how that data is collected. If you're looking at a study, what are the results saying? It's very dependent on how the information is received and processed and the way it's looked at, right? And then on top of it, when you have these people kind of looking for studies that support what they want it to support, they're eliminating or ignoring studies that might support the contrary position, which in my opinion is a rebellion against the Socratic method.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is people don't like data that doesn't support the things that they believe to be true, even if the research says otherwise?
Correct. That is human nature. They want their gut instinct to be right. And I think particularly in recent years, especially in the political climate we're in, there's been a lot of very public figures and very prominent people doing this exact thing, looking for confirmation bias and only pointing out the facts and the studies that support their position on topics. And they're reinforcing that it's okay to do that when that is not a scientific approach at all. And if anyone went to any kind of science class, they know that that is the opposite of what you're supposed to do when you're looking at research to support things, right?
Yeah, even beyond just actual scientific research, I'm sure I'm going to assume all of you, because it's happened to me multiple times in my career where I've been asked in my role to research an issue or a topic, and I've done that research and I've brought it back to my manager or boss, and they've thrown it out because the research does not confirm what they believe to be the issue happening. So it's, I think even it doesn't even have to be scientific research for people to just disregard any research that people have done if it doesn't confirm what their quote unquote gut is telling them or their ego.
Yeah, I used to ask my partner before I would go do tax research, I would say, okay, so do you want me to write a memo that supports this position you're taking, and find as much as I can to support that, to put it into the file, to document it? Or do you want me to come at it from the perspective of what is the more likely than not correct answer, right? Because that's what we tend to look for in tax research is, can we support this position? If we end up in a court of law, can we defend it? And is it more likely than not to be defensible and to be the accurate answer? Because there's so much gray area. So I would ask that question to clarify, because that changes the way you approach a situation completely. And, I think more often than not, it was, we would like a memo to support this position and defend it if we were to end up in a situation of an IRS audit or a court appearance to challenge that.
You raise, I think, a really important point in our profession, which is that whether it's in tax, and I've seen the same thing occur on the audit side, right? The interpretation of a financial reporting standard. How do we record this? What's the proper way to record this? And how do you actually figure out what are the facts and circumstances, and how do you apply? And does it apply to the one that we're looking at, compared to what you're describing is, here's our facts and circumstances, what supports our interpretation of the way, or the client's interpretation of the way they want it to come out.
Absolutely. And I think, that kind of is maybe a symptom of a profession that's focused on risk, right? So you're trying to, what is the risk of taking this position that it is wrong? And so there's a tolerable amount of risk that is kind of banked into that decision to take that position, even though it may be wrong, but the risk of proving that it's wrong may be small.
Well, I think that's the thing, though, right? In most of this type of research, right, when we get into the technical side of our profession, normally it's not right or wrong. It's better or worse, right? It's more correct or less correct. There's so much gray area, even within the way that you interpret GAAP, the way that you interpret IRS rulings. And sometimes, quite frankly, they're contradictory when you're looking at, tax law that's been through the courts. You might have an IRS private letter ruling that says this is what it should be for some other company, which of course is not supportable unless you pay for your own. And you might have a court case that says the complete opposite. And so you're looking at two contradictory pieces of information about the same topic, trying to decide what is the better way and what were the differences in their facts and circumstances from our facts and circumstances, right? And so, I think it's not right or wrong, it's better or worse.
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. I wonder, one of the challenges I think with research is the nature of research, in that when you continue to research and refine research and get better unbiased data, it improves, which means research that was previously done may no longer be valid because you've improved it. And so this would be a stupid example. And actually, Liz, you kind of set this up with your mini dinosaur when we were prepping. But there, look at that. What happened to the Brontosaurus, right? I learned as a kid in science that the Brontosaurus was a dinosaur. And now we've learned more that science at that time was wrong. That dinosaur never existed. And that this is what happens. Yeah. Yeah. It's
God, you're like breaking my world apart.
Parts of it were more akin to a brachiosaurus, and so they reclassified the way that it went. But also, there's a lot of debate on dinosaurs in general around science, so talk about that all day too. But continue your thought, Byron.
Sorry, Brian.
Well, and so I think it's challenging for a lot of people because, science, and, that's just one example that I can relate to, but science changes over time. And not that science actually changes. I think science is science. It's just we get better at doing things. But it's really easy to say, well, the science of the 1980s said this, and the science of the 2024 is completely contradictory. So how can I even trust science? It's very easy to, I think, for people to discount those types of things when it's always changing.
Building on that, I think that's where I don't think people realize that there even is a role of scientific research within accounting. And that was where, once I started getting involved with the AAA, not the car service, but the American Accounting Association, which is the Accounting Professors Association, this is where I learned there was this whole wealth of research out there where the researchers are basically looking and saying, are our principles and some of these interpretations, like Liz is mentioning, are these actually accurate and true? And are there can they substantiate by looking across the market, multiple companies, across the world, at whether these things are being applied correctly and what's the outcome if they're not applied correctly?
That's really
Absolutely.
interesting. I actually didn't know that they were doing all that research. That's fascinating.
And I think, if you broaden the base of what the research is on, like you're saying, Donnie, and you start looking at it from like the industry level, from the firm level, and you start thinking about the dynamics of firms that operate better and are, and however you define better, but culturally, more productive, it becomes very important to have the information about the averages, about the landscape, about what tends to have a relationship to outcomes that you want. That information makes you make better decisions and helps us help the industry and move it forward. Now, also, I fact checked myself. It wasn't the Brachiosaurus; it was the Apatosaurus that they reclassified the genus of Brontosaurus down and put the Apatosaurus over it. So just want to make sure my dinosaur facts are correct.
Yeah, I thought it was the Brachiosaurus too. So good save.
Yeah. But yeah, so science changes and so does statistical research, because statistical research is a form of science, right? Thinking about these things from the perspective of math, and math is ultimately a science.
No doubt. No doubt. So as we think about research within the profession, Donnie, I'm curious, the research studies that they're doing, are they like researching the impact on the public from like tax decisions or accounting principles? What kind of research are they doing?
Yes. Answer's yes. So it's like,
wow.
There's actually a huge variety of research that's being done, and part of it is part of it sometimes checks, for example, since we've been talking a lot tax, did this tax policy or law change, whatever, have the intended effect? Like what did we see? I've read other research about the effectiveness of disclosures. Based upon the current guidance on disclosures, are the right things getting disclosed? Are we seeing things afterwards that probably should have been disclosed that weren't disclosed? There's been research I've read around auditor effectiveness, whether, for example, very near to all of us, the use of technology within an audit. How does the use of technology and different technologies impact the effectiveness of an audit? But it can also, I've seen also cross-discipline research. So there was an interesting one, I thought, and this was actually done in China, where there was research that found that CPAs or auditors that participate with nonprofits, sit on nonprofit boards and things, are actually better auditors and less likely to, or actually I'll say it the other way, more likely to uphold their duty to the public because of their commitment to the nonprofit side. That was an interesting one where I went, So as I'm interviewing potential auditor people, I want to look at students that have a commitment to nonprofits or, have some type of connection there.
Wow. I think that's really fascinating. And I think it's also really important to call out that probably people who sit on nonprofit boards had that bias, right? Would say like, I feel like this makes me better at my day job because I understand fiduciary duty better, because I am forced to address it on a monthly or quarterly basis, as I said, on this board, which brings it top of mind, which makes better definitions, better understanding. I can bring that to my day-to-day work. People who don't sit on nonprofit boards would probably have the bias of, I'm just as good as that guy. Right? Like, I understand this just as well. I do just as good. So why would I ever like think that that thing would potentially make me better at my day job? And so, I bring that to light because those are the things we're talking about, where it's like this information, there's confirmation bias on both sides, right? People could look for a study saying, no, it didn't happen, or yes, it did, or whatever. But there's, definitively been a study that showed this, that was fairly sourced information, that compared it in a reasonable way, that was able to come to the table and say, hey, this is an important conclusion that we may not have known without somebody actually researching it and looking at it, and bringing it to light in a way that now we can use that to make decisions.
Completely. Yeah, that's why at the center we've committed to really doing research. That's what we figured out our niche is. So for example, there's been all this discussion about the 150-hour rule for CPAs, and we worked with the Illinois Society of CPAs, or Illinois CPA Society, on their research on what are the barriers to CPA, and the number one thing that came up was actually I think it was like the top 2 or 3, was actually time. The students needed more time to actually study. It was competing with both work commitments and family commitments. The 150 didn't, and the cost of the 150, which are the two things that come up a lot in the anecdotal discussions, were not even within the top 5 reasons, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, anecdotally, I was 120. And time was a challenge for me as well. So I feel like, the time being a factor in either arenas is kind of an equalizer with respect to any differences in requirements or rules in attaining the CPA.
Going to Liz's point, though, given that piece of data, and reliable data, given that it's been done through scientific research, that actually changes perhaps our approach, right? Now we need to look at how do we create time. We can't necessarily control candidates' family side, but we can control the work environment because most of them are working at a firm. So really what we need to do if we want to increase the number of CPA candidates is really work with the firms to get them bought in that this is what needs to be done, and you need to give your candidates more time to study. Which actually, yeah, you're right, Brian, because I was with the 122, and that was a challenge back then too.
Oh yeah,
I got 150 hours, but when I did it, I did it to the letter of the rule, which meant that I went to the community college and challenged for basic bookkeeping and basic accounting classes because I had all my upper division credits. I just needed random accounting credits to meet that 150. So, some would say that was kind of circumventing the system, and there may have been a rule passed in a certain state after I did that said that wasn't allowed, which was kind of cool to have some ramifications come out of what I did. But I did it. I got my 150. I got my nice little CPA license, and it worked.
Here we are.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it is fascinating to see the way that information comes out and the evolution of it as well. So if we go back to the dinosaur, example that Byron brought up, the Brontosaurus was definitely reclassified, right, as and saying, oh, this dinosaur didn't actually exist. But then a further study looked at the structure of the skulls and found that no, there was a slight distinction, but they were related to the Apatosaurus. And so they reclassed it, instead of being like a whole section of dinosaur, to a very specific piece of, the genealogy of that dinosaur, and were able to split it off from the Apatosaurus in part of the evolutionary tract. And coming back to that, there's the understanding that people have today is based on today's data and information, but that doesn't mean that there won't be more data and information to come out tomorrow, right? And so, we're talking about the 150 rule, and in Illinois, that wasn't the biggest holdup, but it might be in another state, right? And there might be more studies or more globally collected information that's statistically relevant to more of the country that could change our understanding of what the biggest barriers are to people getting their CPA license. And being open to that is the point of data and research.
Just one point of clarification on that. Sorry. Research was led by Illinois. But we had national responses, over 7,000, I believe, national responses. So that's the national data point, not just the Illinois data point.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. And Liz, kind of maybe bringing this full circle is, exactly what you said with respect to research. You have to be open to what the research tells you and be willing to rethink your understanding or assumptions. Adam Grant just did a book on rethinking, and the whole premise of the book is that the scientific method is all about rethinking the assumptions and knowledge that you previously had and being open to changing your mind. And that's where the confirmation bias just blocks people, because pipeline issue is a really great one where there's so many different people who claim their studies confirm their personal beliefs, and most people are not taking that objective perspective to, rethink their assumptions and actually just digest what the information is telling them.
So when I talk to people on my team about research and, the way to think about it is learning is not a fixed point in time. Learning is continuous, and so is research. And so, if you have an open mindset, if you have a mindset of possibility, you maintain that. You have to update your understanding of things on a regular basis. And you don't just learn it once, you continuously learn it and evolve your understanding of anything. And so, that's one of the things I look for in interviews is people that have that type of growth mindset, that understand that learning is continuous and don't just say, well, I learned it once, like I know it. Hands down, there's no room for improvement or growth there because I'm already, educated in that manner. And I just kind of call BS on that. I think we are all educated to a certain degree and we are all continuous learners. And the same thing is true with research. It is continuously evolving and we all need to update our understanding of all the things on a regular basis.
Well, with that, I guess we'll wrap. Take care, everyone.
See you soon.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.